Okay, so this is the ram tilt right here, my power tilt, and the marina was going to charge me $650 to reseal this whole thing because it was leaking just right up here on the top. And you know, I decided, no, I'm going to give it a shot and try it myself first, which ended up being just fine. And I ended up doing it myself for actually under $300, and that was including buying some special tools and stuff. A lot of videos online on how to actually build the reseal units in here, which once you get this unit out, it's really not that bad to do, as long as you have the right tools. But some of the things that the videos don't really talk about is how to get this thing out. Sometimes that's a pain. Now, I'm not going to actually take it out for anyone. I'm just going to explain some of the things that you kind of need to beware of. The first thing is a little pin right up here that goes through and holds onto that shaft right there. And the way I did it is I just used a tool, kind of like a little punch tool here, and I ran it through on the other side and punched it out as far as I could. The problem is they don't have a straight shot going through. So once you get so far, you can't go any further with it. It wasn't really using the right tool, and if I had to do all over again, I would actually get it's known as a slide hammer. And what it does is it can actually hook right around. There's like a little lip on this thing, and then you just slam it out like that, and it would actually pull it out. You also, if you get this special fitting, this is threaded right here, you can screw like a bolt in there, screw the bolt into the slide hammer, and do it that way as well. I was able to work it out. What I did is I got it with one of these as far as I could, and then I just basically inside the lip there, I kind of put a pipe wrench on it and ran it down like this and hit the pipe wrench with my hammer right through here and get out the rest of the way. Not an ideal solution. I would not suggest doing that, but that's, you know, probably one of the hardest parts is this. The other thing that was difficult was this one down here. So you take this one out, and this one is really easy. You can pound right through. This one came out really easy for me, with the exception of I had to loosen up these bolts to do it. On one of the sides, I think I ended up doing them both because I did on that side. Then, of course, what one broke, but this side, so I had to push it through this way. But what I had to do is I just loosened these bolts up and kind of pushed them back a little bit, and then the bolt came right out. I mean, this is like a great engineering marvel from these motors. I really don't get why they do that. But anyway, the problem is with doing that is once I sealed it back, or once I put it back, I didn't reseal it. So sure enough, when I took the boat out, I got a leak through here, and I got a leak through the other one. I've now since removed the bolts completely. I've resealed it with the silicone, and then I put them back together. I haven't tested this yet because we have really cold weather, but as soon as I get a chance, I'll test that to make sure it's okay. And if something else is wrong, then I know it wasn't that, but I think that's what was causing my problem, because it was adding some water was getting in the boat only when I ran the engine up. And what I read on the forums is say, yeah, that's what's happening, is it's coming in through those, which would make sense because I loosened those up and probably didn't do a very good job of tightening them down. That's just another thing I want to kind of let you know about. The other thing that a lot of people have a hard time is getting this top off right here, this part. And there's basically 4 holes in it, and you got to put a tool in there to do it. And I have seen online where people have taken, you know, air chisels to these things and stuff like that, because I guess it's just been so bad they sealed up, and then they just replace that cap. I didn't want to do that. These caps aren't as cheap as they say. These caps are about $100 a piece or more, depends on where you go. That you might find them a little less. But what I bought was this tool right here, and I bought it from 5 Star Marine, which I have a link to them in the description. And this worked perfectly. I mean, I put this on, you take this tool, you just put a pipe wrench in it like that. And what I did, or not a pipe wrench, a socket wrench in there. And I just put a little cheater bar on here, this little piece of PVC actually that went about to here. And I tell you what, this thing popped off really easy. I mean, it was almost nothing. It was probably the easiest part of this entire thing was breaking this off. So that was actually pretty simple to do. What I did is I took the entire unit out, and then I put it on a bench and I worked with it there. Now, one of the things that I had a problem with is this motor right here. This is a brand new motor, okay? And the problem is the wire goes up into the side and it plugs in to a harness inside the motor here. And one tip for everyone is, what worked for me that was the best is by actually taking off the side panel. So I took off, it wasn't this side panel, it was the other side panel of this this cover right here, and then I had access to it right away. It was really easy. I just unplugged it and that was it. The problem is the plug's about that big around, and I wasn't able to get the plug through this little hole that's sitting up here. So I had to cut the wires and then splice them, and I just spliced them inside the motor. I thought that was a really piss poor design, and when I was first doing it, I was so convinced that there had to be another way the motor I had on here, it wasn't all sealed with the wires here where I would have easily figured it out. I thought, well, maybe I just go inside the motor and disconnect them there and pull them through. Of course, I took these screws out, popped this off, or no, it wasn't these screws, it was the screws here. Popped this off, and sure enough, the springs went all over the place, and pretty much that shot my motor for me. So not such a great idea. I had to end up splicing the wires anyways. So that's the kind of, I want to give you a lot of caution on that, is that this is, you know, kind of a mess, and you're probably going to have to splice the wires back together. I found it strange. I went over to Cabela's and I was looking at the brand new boats just to see how they had done it, and they still have a really small hole here that I know there's no way they're going to get a fitting through there. So I can't believe, you know, in well over 20 years they haven't done any improvements on that. I have seen some that run them a different way and have little grooves, but it's really strange. So it's just something to be aware of. You're probably going to have to be splicing these wires. Obviously check first. My splices are inside the engine, and they're all heat shrunk and everything, so it's going to be fine, but that's what I did. Everything else works pretty good. As far as, like, these came out really easy. There's a manual release plug that's right on the other side of this thing, and you actually can access it through that hole right there. And that was seized up, but I just took my time with it, and was able to get that released. I think if I had to do it all over again, I'd probably do the exact same thing. I'd just take the entire unit off, put it on my bench, and get it working that way. But you could actually just take these 4 bolts out right here, and you could actually loosen this up, take this bolt out, and you can just drop that half of the unit out. You don't have to take the motor out if you don't want to, so you don't have to actually do that. Just keep in mind that there's a little shaft pin that goes from here into here, and when you're taking this off, just make sure that you don't lose that. If you do, 5-star Marine, and you'll get one for about 15 bucks. But that would save you from having to disconnect. I found put it on the bench was better. Plus, I hooked it up to a little battery that I had, and I moved it up and down, because you have to get the air out of it. And the way it bleeds the air is you fill it up here, okay, with fluid, and then you keep running it, and it will eventually bleed all the air right out of this top seal. And you'll think, well, if it's bleeding air out, it's going to be leaking, but it doesn't. It just bleeds the air out, and that's it. As far as doing this right here, this is really kind of a pain to get the oil in there. What I did is I just took a syringe that I got at the Tractor Supply shop, and I put a tube on it. I just sucked it right out of the power steering. It's basically power steering fluid, hydraulic fluid. I just injected it into there until it filled up where it was. That made it really simple, because I did the initial bleeding out. And the way you bleed this thing out, by the way, is you just hook it to a battery, and you just switch these wires around. So if the blue's on the positive, then it's going to push it up, and if the green's on the positive, it'll send it down. So basically, you know, if you just flip them on the battery, that's the way the motor works. Really, it's pretty simple. It'll just cause this to go up and down. So on my workbench, I just kept doing it up and down as much as I could. But I found that when I got it out here and started doing it with the motor was at first real spongy. It wouldn't go all the way up, and it was kind of a mess. And it was just because I didn't quite have all the air out. And so I had to just put some more fluid in here, and I ran it up and down on the engine a bunch of times, and now it works just fine, you know. Also, when you're doing this, just make sure you probably have these on your motor. You may not be able to see this in the video, but just make sure you lock your motor up when you're doing this, or you're going to have a hard time. Now, this is a 50 horsepower motor, so when I take this off, the motor's actually really light to tilt it up or do whatever I had to do manually with it. But actually, I just locked it down on those, and actually I had it all locked on this, and I had those as a backup, and it worked just fine. But I just wanted to go through that with you guys because, one, I saved, again, over $350 by doing this myself, and I'm fairly mechanical, but I'm not a mechanic by any means. I'm a programmer, so you know, by trade at least. So this is, you know, it wasn't that big of a deal to do, and you know, again, $350 difference on what it was. And if I had to do this all over again, because the seal packets alone are $100, and I can get them from 5-star Marine, I found out, for $75. So if I had to do this over again because I got my little tool, I'd probably buy myself a slide hammer for about 20 bucks, and I'd buy those tools for $100. I could completely reseal this again if I ever needed to. Thing is most likely I will never need to. You know, it's probably will be hold up for the next, you know, 20 years. So anyway, just thought I'd share that with you guys because a lot of videos will show you how to do this inside of here, which isn't really all that hard, but they don't really get into some of the problems you might come across when you're actually getting it out. And also keep in mind when you put stuff back together, this pin here and this pin here, make sure you grease them up when you're putting them back in, so you can get them out again if you ever have to. Most likely, if you do it right, you probably won't have to. But anyway, just thought I'd share.